Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Canadian Security Intelligence Service has characterized foreign interference by China as the greatest strategic threat to Canada because of its pervasive, persistent, and sophisticated state-sponsored threat activity targeting Canadian democratic institutions. That's a quote. The CSIS 2025 public report that was tabled in Parliament on May the 1st continues to identify China as the most active and sophisticated source of foreign interference and espionage in Canada. Bill C-25 responds to the specific evidence of Chinese influence and interference in Canadian federal elections centered on intelligence assessments from CSIS, reviews by the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, and Commissioner Ogg's public inquiry into foreign interference in federal electoral processes and democratic institutions. The urgent necessity for legislation to address the current Chinese regime's challenges to the integrity of our democratic process is underscored by two escalating threats. One, under Party General Secretary Xi Jinping.
Just to stop you there for a second. Just, I know it's challenging with the mics. Just be careful when you're flipping pages, not to hit the mics. Thank you so much.
I did that last time I was here. I'm sorry. I'm a slow learner. Number one, under Party General Secretary Xi Jinping, the Chinese regime has vastly expanded the resources of the Chinese Communist Party's United Front Work Department's foreign operations. Working alongside the Ministry of State Security, this apparatus actively employs covert, coercive, and corrupt means to undermine Canadian democratic institutions in the favor of a hostile autocratic regime. Number two, rapid advances in artificial intelligence and facial recognition technology are acting as force multipliers for China's subversive machinations in Canada. This bill is about countering bribery, intimidation, misleading publications, unauthorized computer use, and social media posting of deep fakes originating inside and outside Canada. Looking at the specific language, we have, for example, the proposed amendment to the Elections Act, Section 282.4, in the bill, Clause 8, General Elections, and it says, foreign entities / powers cannot unduly influence electors by knowingly incurring expenses to promote / oppose candidates, potential candidates, parties, or leaders. Then we have the proposed amendments to sections 349.95, pre-election period, and 358, election period, which in the bill are clauses 19 and 23. A third party shall use only contributions from Canadian individuals to pay for regulated expenses, and shall use as regulated expenses only property and services that are contributions from Canadian individuals. Well, all of this is high-flown language, but the practical question remains. Once Bill C-25 becomes Canadian law, will it empower CSIS and the RCMP to successfully investigate and prosecute the strongly alleged illicit campaign financing and covert interference by Chinese diplomats and their proxies in ridings such as Vancouver East, Stevenson, Richmond East, and Don Valley North? Or the CSIS report from December 20th, 2021, cited by David Johnston in his independent special rapporteur on foreign interference activity that says, and I quote, sympathetic donors were encouraged to provide campaign contributions to candidates favored by China, donations for which they received a tax credit from the federal government. Then the recipient political campaigns quietly and illegally returned part of the contribution, which was the difference between the original donation and the government's refund, back to the donors. To date, none of the individuals, a large number of individuals implicated in these very serious allegations, have faced consequences. None of the Chinese diplomats involved have been declared persona non grata, and non-diplomatic proxies for the Chinese regime have yet to be held accountable in a Canadian court of law. In the absence of a robust foreign influence transparency registry, in these aspects, Bill C-25 risks being more performative than substantive. I wonder if these proposed amendments to the Canada Elections Act can effectively address the credible threat that agents of the People's Republic of China pose to Canada's electoral process. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and again, I thank the excellent committee interpreters for their work.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm going to direct my questions to Mr. Burton. The PRC, for all intents and purposes, has its largest diplomatic footprint in Canada. It has nearly 3 times as many accredited diplomats in Canada as it does in Australia, despite Australia having much stronger trade ties with Beijing, a comparable population to Canada, and a comparably sized diaspora community. In fact, the PRC has roughly the same number of accredited diplomats in Canada as it does in the United States. So, given that, is it fair to say that the reason Beijing has such an outsized diplomatic presence in Canada because Beijing sees Canada as a soft target for its foreign interference and transnational repression activities?
Yes, I think so. I was quite surprised to find out that in addition to the very large embassy on St. Patrick Street, the Chinese authorities have other buildings in Ottawa to accommodate their diplomatic cohort, which is, I think, something like 3 or 4 times that of Japan and even more multiplied of what we have for the Indians currently. So assuming that Chinese diplomats work as efficiently as diplomats of other countries, then one cannot but assume that a large number of those people that we have accredited as diplomats in Canada are engaged in activities which are not part of legitimate diplomatic activities. In other words, that we expelled one single Ministry of State Security agent, Zhao Wei, when there was some exposure in the Globe and Mail about his activities to potentially intimidate the family of the conservative foreign policy critic Michael Chong. But I think there are a lot more of them. So the question really is, and I don't really understand it, is why do we have so many more Chinese diplomats accredited to Canada than we have Canadian diplomats accredited to China? How did this situation arise? And seeing as it's within the rights of a country to agree or not agree to a diplomat based on what their function is supposed to be. The Chinese have attempted to have police stationed in Vancouver, and we refused. Why don't we determine how many diplomats they need and declare the rest of them persona non grata and send them back to Beijing, which would reduce this problem that I've tried to identify, which is we haven't been able to deal with these revelations that have come through the past couple of years in the Hague Commission and the CSIS documents. And similarly, next month is the 2nd anniversary of enacting Bill C-70, the Counter Foreign Interference Act, and I've been watching it pretty closely, and I haven't seen any evidence of any foreign interference being countered whatsoever over the past 2 years. So, I think maybe addressing it at the source, as you suggest, would be a better idea.
Well, and with respect to Beijing's accredited diplomats, it's not just looking at the number and speculating that these diplomats are involved in foreign interference activities and transnational repression. It's well established, isn't it?
Yes, I think we do have evidence of this going on because of the activities that the leaked CSIS assessments that subsequently have been affirmed to be genuine have been warning the government about. And so, there's no question that Chinese diplomats are very active in activities which are not consistent with normal diplomatic function.
Well, and I would add that Madam Justice Hogue concluded that the PRC's Toronto consulate interfered in the 2019 Don Valley North Liberal nomination to support Han Dong, who became the Liberal candidate and then a Liberal MP. Beijing's Vancouver consulate had its footprints all over interference activities in the 2021 election in the Lower Mainland to defeat Conservative candidates, including targeting then MP Kenny Chiu with a mass disinformation campaign, and Joe Tay, the Conservative candidate in Don Valley North in the 2025 election, had a bounty placed on him by Beijing, and there is credible evidence that Beijing's Toronto consulate was involved in intimidation and voter suppression tactics in Don Valley North. In the face of these egregious and blatant attacks on our sovereignty and our democratic processes, the Liberal government has done absolutely nothing to deal with the Toronto consulate or the Vancouver consulate, have they?
No, and I think that, I think what we're looking at here is a very large Chinese Communist Party operation, whether it's the United Front Work Department or otherwise. I mean, if you look at the rank of the Chinese Consul General in Vancouver, this person is a much higher rank in the communist regime than one would expect for someone who is a Consul General in a single North American city, suggesting that their responsibilities far exceed their diplomatic function.
And not a single diplomat has been expelled for these interference activities. You cited Xiaowei, but outside of Xiaowei, not a single diplomat expelled, correct?
Yes, and I'm discouraged, and I did make a recommendation to the Aug Commission that we look into that. So far, it hasn't been acted on.
A single accredited diplomat summoned. The ambassador has not been summoned in respect of these specific activities related to interference in our elections.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, that was a very quick answer. Thank you, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup, l'enfant.
Thank you to all our witnesses. I have questions for everyone, but I'd like to start with you, Mr. Burton. You spoke about the ability for foreign agents to use proxies to fund candidates supported by foreign actors. You talked about how often people would receive money that corresponds to the amount that comes out of their pocket, because some of the amount, of course, is refunded by the public purse. So someone donates $400, gets $300 back as a tax credit. The foreign agent pays that person $100. So logically, are we saying here that the state is actually funding foreign interference with the tax credits?
Well, yes. I mean, that's how this scam worked, and presumably the refunds were made through these police stations, these covert off-site institutions serving the Chinese government's interest. I don't think that the people who received the money back, went to the Chinese embassy and got it from there. So it is indicative of problems in our enforcement of Canadian law, and everybody who was involved in this scheme clearly knew that it was illegal. I mean, there's no ambiguity about it. You were being given an under the table refund for your donation. So, I mean, I'm just beside myself. But the issue for me really is, will it stop? Are we actually going to prevent this behavior from persisting in the next election in certain ridings that the Chinese state has identified as amenable to their subversion? And the question of what are the rewards for this? I think some of it are rewards which the people who are colluding with agents of the Chinese state are receiving back in China. So how do we trace that kind of scheme, which is transnational and covert and corrupt?
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Mr. Burton, I'd like to hear you, following Madam Turnbull's remarks, about the idea of reinstating per vote subsidy with perhaps ceilings and getting rid of tax credits without necessarily taking a position on the philosophical side of things. could that have a positive impact on foreign interference? For example, if we at least gave further thought to these matters.
I think, that similar to what Ms. Briere was saying, that the Chinese and the Russians have enormous resources that they're dedicating to this kind of work. I mean, the United Front Work Department of the Chinese Communist Party is a couple of times the entire Chinese Foreign Ministry. So they're dedicating a terrific amount of effort to this. So I feel that they will always find some way to do an end run around us or find some kind of loophole that will allow them to exert influence where they feel that it should be exerted. So, certainly this particular scheme about getting lots and lots of people to donate and then get the refund is one, but other methods of funding also can arise. I just think that they will do more and more. And as I said in my opening statement, they are expanding their resources to their Canadian operations significantly, and AI and other computer enhanced methods allow them to do it much better. And this includes the problem of disinformation, a very serious problem of disinformation, particularly within the community that get their information in the Chinese language.
Mr. Burton, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm with you on this. I think it's a issue which should be addressed by amendments made by this committee.
And you think that this is the type of loophole that the United Front Work Department and the PRC would exploit?
Definitely. I mean, they look for any loophole and opportunity to exploit our freedom, our free and open system to further Chinese interests in Canada. And they have such a big operation and so much coordination and so much capacity that there's no loophole that they're not going to be going through, frankly, based on my 50 years of experience dealing with that regime.
Okay. Mr. Burton, I want to follow up with you from your opening statement regarding the Foreign Influence Registry. You noted that it's been 2 years since legislation was passed. 2 years later, we don't have the registry up and running. Are you concerned that the government is dragging its feet? And secondly, are you concerned about the independence of the commissioner and the impact that will have on the effectiveness of the registry once it is fully up and running?
Yes, I am concerned about the role of the civil servant who has been designated the foreign interference coordinator, that's Sébastien Aubin-Giguère, whether he would, in effect, be preventing Anton Boekman, who is been appointed the commissioner, from acting independently. And Mr. Boekman's office has been not very well funded. So I am concerned about whether the government genuinely wants a robust and effective foreign influence registry that's independent from the ministry and the Prime Minister's office.